Formula One is the most expensive soap opera on Earth. But beneath the glitz of Monaco and the roar of V10 engines lies a history of theft, lies, and pure corruption. From team bosses sabotaging their own drivers to secret blueprints hidden in copy shops, we're going deep. This is the F1 Iceberg, and today we're descending all the way to Level 7. Level 1. The Multi-21 Betrayal. The year is 2013. The setting is the Sepang International Circuit in Malaysia. It's a humid, oppressive afternoon, and for the Red Bull racing team, everything seems to be going perfect. They are sitting on a comfortable 1-2 finish, but inside the cockpits of cars number 1 and 2, a cold war that had been brewing for years was about to turn into a public execution of team orders. To understand why this happened, we have to look back at the 2012 season finale in Brazil. Sebastian Vettel was fighting Fernando Alonso for the World Championship. Vettel needed every point, but his own teammate, Mark Webber, didn't make it easy. At the start of that race, Webber squeezed Vettel toward the pit wall, a move that nearly ended Vettel's championship hopes on the very first lap of the race. Vettel eventually won that title, but he didn't forget, and to nobody's surprise, he did forgive either. Fast forward to Malaysia 2013. The race engineers radio in the command, Multimap 2-1. This was Red Bull's secret code. The 2 referred to Webber, who was in the lead. The 1 referred to Vettel. It meant, stay in that order, turn down the engines, save the tires, bring the cars home safely. Webber took the orders and complied as one who was in first place would do. He dialed back his engine, believing the fight was over. But Vettel saw an opening. He saw a teammate who was vulnerable. Ignoring the frantic screams of his team principal, Christian Horner, Vettel lunged. The 2 cars, painted in identical blue and red, went wheel to wheel at 190 miles per hour, inches from the concrete wall. When Vettel crossed the line first, the silence in the garage was deafening. In the cool-down room before the podium, Webber didn't hold back. He sat down, stared at Vettel, and uttered the 3 words that would define F1 drama for a decade. Multi-21, Seb. Multi-21. Vettel tried to apologize later, but the damage was done. The friendly Red Bull era was dead. It proved a dark reality of the sport. Your teammate is the first person you have to beat, even if it means burning the whole team down to do it. Level 2. The Schumacher parking incident. Monaco is the pinnacle of the F1 calendar. It's a place where qualifying is more important than the race itself, because overtaking on those narrow and winding streets is nearly impossible. If you start on pole, you've basically won. For those not familiar with F1, the term on pole means you qualified with the fastest time, earning you the lead start of the actual race. In 2006, Michael Schumacher was under immense pressure. The young, fiery Fernando Alonso was the reigning champion, and he was proving to be faster than ever. During the final minutes of qualifying, Schumacher held the provisional pole position. But Alonso was out on the track, and the timing screens were turning purple. He was having monster lap. He was going to take pole position away from Schumacher. That's when the Schumacher short circuit happened. As Michael approached the infamous Rascasse corner, a tight, low-speed right-hander, he did something that defied logic. He locked his front tire, steered into the corner, and then he just stopped. He didn't hit the wall. He didn't stall the engine initially. He just parked his Ferrari right in the middle of the racing line. Because of where he parked, the stewards had no choice but to wave the double yellow flags. This forced Alonso and everyone else to slow down. Alonso's lap was ruined. Schumacher took pole. The fallout was immediate. The paddock was absolutely fuming, and rightly so. F1 legend Kimi Räikkönen famously said, Given that we are not Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, I think what he did was unsporting. Team bosses called it disgusting. The stewards spent 8 hours reviewing the data. They found that Schumacher had moved the steering wheel in a way that made no sense for a driver of his caliber. As a result of this, he was stripped of his pole position and forced to start from the very back of the grid. It was a moment that showed the world the dark side of greatness. Schumacher wasn't just a driver, he was a win-at-all-costs machine who was willing to park his dignity in a Monaco gutter if it meant staying on top. Level 3. Crashgate. The billion-dollar fraud. If Spygate was about theft, Crashgate was about something far more dangerous. A conspiracy to commit a high-speed accident on purpose. The 2008 Singapore Grand Prix was a landmark event, the first ever night race in F1 history. But for the Renault team, it was a nightmare. Their star driver, Fernando Alonso, had qualified 15th. At a street circuit like Singapore, starting 15th is a death sentence for your podium hopes. The team needed a miracle. Or, as it turns out, they needed a sacrifice. Before the race, Renault team boss Flavio Briatore and technical director Pat Simmons met with their second driver, the young Nelson Piquet Jr. They gave him a specific set of instructions. They told him exactly which lap to crash on, lap 14, and exactly where to do it, turn 17. Why turn 17? Because there were no cranes nearby. If a car crashed there, the FIA would be forced to deploy a full safety car to clear the debris. The plan was executed with bone-chilling precision. Alonso was called into the pits for an unusually early stop on lap 12. He fell to the back of the pack. 2 laps later, Piquet Jr. lost control and slammed his Renault into the wall at turn 17. The safety car came out. Because the pit lane was closed during the initial safety car period back then, the leaders were forced to stay out while Alonso, who had already pitted, leaped past the entire field as they eventually came in for fuel. Alonso won the race. The world cheered, thinking it was some miracle comeback. But as the saying goes, the truth will always prevail. A year later, after Piquet Jr. was released from the team, he went to the FIA and spilled everything. He admitted he had crashed on purpose. The scandal nearly destroyed the sport. Renault was given a suspended permanent ban. Briatore was banned for life. Simmons was banned for 5 years. It remains the only time in history a team has been proven to have engineered a life-threatening accident just to win a race. Should Piquet have gone to the FIA like he did, or should he have kept this a secret? Level 4. Spygate. The $100 million dossier. This is where the paddock stops being a sports arena and starts looking like a 007 movie script. Like I mentioned earlier, most people think the authorities only deal with high-level street crime. But in 2007, the sovereign files of Formula One were blown wide open. At the center of this was a man named Nigel Stepney, a disgruntled Ferrari engineer, and Mike Coughlin, McLaren's chief designer. Stepney felt passed over at Ferrari, so he did the unthinkable. He leaked a 780-page document containing every secret of the Ferrari F2007 car. We're talking about top-secret brake balances, weight distributions, and fuel strategies that teams spent hundreds of millions to develop. How was it caught? In the most old-school way possible. Coughlin's wife took the 780-page dossier to a local copy shop in England to have it scanned. The shop employee, seeing the Ferrari logo and confidential stamps on every page, realized this wasn't a normal document. He then contacted Ferrari. Think about the tension inside those headquarters. McLaren was a team trying to get back to winning form. This scandal didn't just halt them, it set them on fire. The FIA hit them with a $100 million fine. To put that in perspective, that's more than the entire yearly budget of some teams on the grid. They were stripped of every championship point. As I asked before, was it worth it? Ferrari was handed the championship, but at what cost to the sport's integrity? This wasn't just a leap in performance, it was a heist. It changed the paddock forever. From that day on, security guards and anti-espionage protocols became as common as mechanics. Level 5. The 1994 Electronic Shadow. The 1994 season is the darkest chapter in F1 history, and it wasn't just because of the tragedies on track. It was the year of the invisible cheat. After the death of Ayrton Senna, the sport was in a state of mourning and confusion. Senna, the man who gave his life to the sport, was gone. In the power vacuum, Michael Schumacher and his Benetton team seemed to possess a supernatural speed. But rivals, especially the Williams team, were convinced it wasn't supernatural. It was illegal. At the time, driver aids like traction control and launch control were strictly banned. They were seen as taking the soul out of racing. But during the race starts, Schumacher's car would take off like a rocket with zero wheel spin. It looked impossible. The FIA eventually seized Benetton's computer source code. What they found was a hidden menu. To the naked eye, it looked like a standard software list. But if you scrolled down to the bottom and pressed a specific combination of buttons on the steering wheel, Option 13 would appear. Option 13 was launch control. Benetton's defense was legendary in its audacity. They admitted the code was there, but claimed they never used it. Can you imagine that? Having a win button on your steering wheel and telling the world you just like to look at it. When I read that, I actually laughed. Imagine that's your best defense, you just didn't use it. And I have to ask, were the other teams just jealous, or was the great Michael Schumacher cheating his way to the top? If Senna had been alive to see this, would he have walked away from the sport in disgust? I have my opinion, but I want you to look at the footage of those 1994 race starts and decide for yourself. Level 6. The 1961 Italian Massacre. Now we descend into a level of darkness that most modern fans can't even comprehend. Today, if a single piece of carbon fiber falls on the track, we see a safety car deployed. In 1961, things were different. Human life was a secondary consideration to the spectacle of Formula One racing. At the Italian Grand Prix in Monza, Ferrari was desperate for a home win. They knew their cars had massive straight-line power, but lacked agility in the corners. To help them, the organizers decided to use the full circuit, which included the terrifying high-speed concrete banking. It was bumpy, it was steep, and it was a death trap. On only the second lap of the race, tragedy struck. Ferrari's Wolfgang von Trips, the championship leader, touched wheels with Jim Clark. Von Trips's Ferrari was launched into the air, flying directly into the wire fence where spectators were leaning over to get a better view. Von Trips was killed instantly. 15 fans were also slaughtered alongside him. But here is the part that I still can't wrap my head around. The race was never stopped. For over 2 hours, the remaining drivers continued to scream past the area where bodies were still being recovered. The organizers claimed they didn't want to stop the race because it would cause a traffic jam that would block ambulances. I find that to be a convenient excuse for a $100 million show. Imagine being a driver in that era. You pass a grandstand and see empty seats where fans were just sitting minutes ago. You see the wreckage of your friend's car, and your team is waving a pit board at you, telling you to go faster. It was pure, unadulterated chaos. Does a trophy ever justify that kind of carnage? Level 7. The 1994 San Marino cover-up. Here we have it. We reached the bottom. Level 7. The weekend that broke the heart of every racing fan on the planet. Imola, 1994. To understand the cover-up, you have to understand the law. One thing to note is that Italian law is very specific. If any athlete dies during a sporting event, the venue immediately becomes a crime scene. Everything must stop. No more racing. On Friday, Rubens Barrichello nearly died in a massive crash. On Saturday, Roland Ratzenberger did in fact die. His car hit a wall at 190 miles per hour. Usually that should have ended the whole weekend. But Ratzenberger was officially pronounced dead at the hospital, not the track. This allowed the show to continue, which in my opinion is quite a disrespectful act to the late Ratzenberger. It is honorable to race the next day? Thinking maybe it is what Ratzenberger would have wanted, or was it again all about the money? Let me know in the comments. Then came Sunday, official race day. Lap 7, the Tamburello corner. Ayrton Senna's steering column snapped and he hit the concrete wall at 135 miles per hour. The main conspiracy lies in the timing. Many doctors and eyewitnesses believe Senna died the moment that suspension piece pierced his helmet. If he was dead on the track, the race would have had to be stopped. But the official word was that he was still alive. He was airlifted to a hospital in Bologna, where he was officially pronounced dead hours later. Why the delay? Because if the race stopped on lap 7, the TV contracts, the sponsors, and the ticket refunds would have cost the organizers a fortune. Money versus morality. I'll ask you one last time. Is money worth more than people's lives? Where do we draw the line? Don't get me wrong, I love Formula One, and I think Formula One is in fact one of the greatest shows on earth. But at level 7, the cost of the ticket is written in blood. If you made it this far, you now know that Formula One is more than just a race. It's a high-stakes game of shadows, where the finish line isn't always where it seems. But these 7 levels are just the beginning of the files we've uncovered. If you want to see the darker side of history, you need to see what happened at the Green Hell. In our next video, we're heading to Germany to investigate the ghost of the Nürburgring, the story of a track so dangerous it was nicknamed the Graveyard of Champions, and the secrets that are still buried beneath its tarmac. If you've enjoyed this video and want to see more, please make sure to subscribe to Formula One Explained. Until next time, keep your eyes on the track and your hands on the ledger.